7 years ago, they erased me from the family like a name from a will. 7 years later, they walked into my downtown Bellmere law firm as if they never abandoned me. They did not come to apologize. They came to kill a lawsuit worth tens of millions of dollars from the inside. The father who kicked me out now demands one title, managing partner. He does not know that this time, his entire family is the one cornered. My name is Miranda Satterfield. I am 36 years old, and from the 24th floor of the Halcyon Center, the city of Bellmere looks less like a place to live and more like a chessboard. From my office window, I watch the morning fog roll off the Bellmere River, a heavy gray blanket that slowly reveals the glass and steel geometry of the financial district. This is my kingdom, Satterfield Row Legal. It is a boutique law firm, but the word boutique only refers to our curated client list, not our bite. We take up a modest but intensely expensive footprint in the city's premier tower. The carpets are thick, the glass is spotless, and the silence here is the kind that costs a premium. It is the sound of absolute discretion. 7 years ago, I did not have a window. I did not have an office, a salary, or a family. I was erased. The excision was surgical, swift, and entirely devoid of the messy emotions you see in television dramas. My father, Preston Satterfield, did not scream. He simply handed me a heavy gold pen and pushed a thick stack of land use permits across his massive mahogany desk. The permits were tied to a sprawling logistics development project, a warehouse empire he was building on the industrial edge of the county. The dates on the documents were wrong. They were intentionally backdated to bypass a newly enacted environmental zoning law, effectively burying severe structural violations. He needed a clean, reputable attorney to sign off on the fraud, lending it the veneer of legitimacy. He needed his daughter. I set the pen down on the leather blotter. I looked him in the eye and said, "I will not put my signature on a federal crime." Preston, I still remember the sudden shift in the room. The air grew stagnant, heavy with the realization of my defiance. Preston looked at me not as a child he had raised, but as a corporate asset that had suddenly depreciated to absolute zero. By the time I walked out of his office, my trust funds were frozen, my credit lines were severed, and my name was quietly but violently stripped from every family deed, will, and holding company. I left the Satterfield estate with exactly 3 things. I had my law degree, I had an immaculate professional reputation, and I had a profound, icy bitterness that I folded up so tightly inside my chest that no one could ever see it breathe. I had no legacy money. I had no safety net. The society friends who used to drink expensive champagne with me suddenly found their schedules entirely booked. I was toxic, a liability. In the circles my family moved in, you do not betray the patriarch unless you want to starve. I spent the first few months living in a studio apartment the size of a closet, eating cheap ramen and trying to figure out how to survive in a world where my last name was both a shield and a curse. But there was one person who did not care about Preston Satterfield or his invisible empire. Her name was Evelyn Rowe. Evelyn was an old, battle-scarred litigator who wore vintage silk scarves to hide the lines on her neck and possessed a legal mind like a steel trap. She found me sitting in a second-rate downtown diner, nursing a black coffee I could barely afford, drafting a resume on a borrowed laptop. She did not offer me pity. She did not offer me charity. She slammed a thick, heavily redacted case file on the greasy Formica table. "I hear you told the old man to go straight to hell," Evelyn said, sliding into the booth opposite me. "I need an associate who knows how to pierce a corporate veil and is not afraid of the dark. You in?" Evelyn looked at me and saw past the ambition. She saw the sheer, unadulterated grit of a woman who had nothing left to lose. She took me in. She gave me a desk in her cramped, paper-stuffed office on the bad side of town. When Evelyn passed away from a quiet, aggressive illness just 3 years later, the world felt entirely empty again. But she had left me a lifeline, an ironclad, seller-financed arrangement to buy out her equity. I paid for this firm with years of bone-deep exhaustion. I worked 100-hour weeks. I slept on a cracked leather sofa in the conference room. I missed holidays, birthdays, and the general rhythm of a normal human life. Slowly, agonizingly, I bought out every single share. I transformed Evelyn's chaotic practice into a razor-sharp enterprise, moving us from the dusty old building into the gleaming heights of the Halcyon Center. Today, Satterfield Row. Legal commands a waiting list that stretches for weeks. We do not advertise. Our clients find us when the monsters come knocking, when the bullies try to take everything. Our specialties are fiduciary fraud, business coercion, and asset shielding. We dismantle the complex webs woven by wealthy sociopaths who believe the rules do not apply to them. My junior associates often marvel at my intuition. They wonder how I can anticipate the exact moment a hostile executive will try to move capital to an offshore shell, or how I know precisely which document they will choose to forge. I never tell my associates the truth. I know how these people operate because I was raised by them. I ate dinner with them. I learned to read complex corporate contracts before I learned to ride a bicycle. I know the exact rhythm of their greed. That intimate knowledge is the weapon I am currently aiming at the largest case this firm has ever handled. We are representing the plaintiff in a massive, multi-million-dollar civil litigation regarding the Marston Corridor redevelopment. To the public, it is a straightforward dispute over land rights and breached fiduciary duties between rival developers. But the public is blind. The media does not see the invisible threads pulling the puppet strings from the shadows. I spent months tracing the shell companies, the blind trusts, and the nominee entities. I know exactly who is hiding at the center of the labyrinth. It is the Satterfield family, my family. They are the shadow defendants in the Marston Corridor case. If we win, we do not just win a massive settlement for our client. We tear down a fundamental pillar of Preston Satterfield's wealth. We expose his illegal maneuvering to federal regulators. We burn his corrupt kingdom to the ground. And he has absolutely no idea that I am the one holding the match. This morning feels entirely ordinary, yet it carries the electric charge of a massive turning point. The morning sunlight catches the edge of my coffee cup as I sit at my desk, reviewing the final outline for a brutal deposition. In exactly 48 hours, I will sit across a long mahogany table from the lead dummy executive for the Marston defendants. I have the bank records. I have the metadata. I have the smoking gun that links their fraudulent transfers directly back to an entity controlled by my father. The strategy is locked in. The questions are meticulously designed to corner the witness, forcing a perjury trap that will shatter the defense completely. I take a slow sip of the dark roast coffee, letting the bitter warmth ground me in the present moment. The office outside my heavy oak door is humming with focused, aggressive energy. The multi-line phones are ringing softly. The paralegals are moving swiftly down the hallway with stacks of discovery documents. It is a symphony of pure competence. I have built an absolute fortress out of the ruins they left me. My name is on the glass. My money pays the lease. Every victory I have secured over the past 7 years has been a silent, brutal rebuke to the man who thought I would simply fade into obscurity. I adjust the cuffs of my tailored silk blouse, smoothing an invisible wrinkle. I feel cold. I feel ready. The trap is perfectly set, and the prey does not even realize they are walking into the snare. I have calculated every variable, anticipated every legal countermeasure, and accounted for every possible delay. For the first time in 7 years, I hold the absolute upper hand. Nothing can derail the momentum of this morning. Nothing can stop the avalanche I am about to trigger in exactly 48 hours. The past is dead, and the future belongs entirely to me. The quiet hum of Satterfield Row Legal shatters at exactly 9 in the morning. I am standing near the open doorway of my office, handing a stack of freshly printed briefs to my lead paralegal, when the heavy, frosted glass double doors of the main reception area swing open. They do not just open. They are pushed apart with the kind of aggressive, sweeping momentum reserved for people who believe they own the air they walk through. The temperature in the reception area drops instantly. I watch from the corridor as the carefully curated piece of my firm is violently interrupted. Preston Satterfield leads the formation. He is wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that costs more than what my junior associates make in 6 months. His silver hair is perfectly coiffed, his posture impossibly rigid, radiating the suffocating authority of a man who has never been told no. Beside him is my mother, Elaine Satterfield. She is draped in understated cashmere, wielding a perfectly practiced, razor-sharp smile that never reaches her cold, calculating eyes. Trailing half a step behind them is my younger brother, Nolan, whose shoulders are hunched, his gaze glued firmly to the imported Italian floor tiles. And then there is the fourth person, a stranger. He is a man dressed in a sharp but unremarkable navy suit, exuding an unnatural, hyper-polite stillness. He does not look like family. He looks like a weapon they unpacked from a velvet box. Our waiting room is currently occupied. 2 high-net-worth clients are sitting on the cream leather sofas, nursing sparkling water, waiting for their scheduled consultations. Dana, my senior receptionist, is on a multi-line call. Protocol dictates that visitors sign the electronic log, take a seat, and wait to be announced. My family does not do protocol. They do not pause at the threshold. They do not glance at the waiting clients. They march in a tight, impenetrable phalanx straight toward the marble reception desk, completely bypassing the velvet stanchions. Dana holds up a polite index finger, whispering into her headset, trying to finish her call. Preston does not wait. He plants both hands flat on the polished marble of Dana's desk, leaning forward into her personal space. "Tell Miranda her family's here," Preston booms. His voice is not a request. It is a theatrical performance. It is calibrated to maximum volume, specifically designed to bounce off the acoustic ceiling panels and land squarely in the ears of the 2 clients sitting nearby. He wants an audience. He is weaponizing the concept of a touching family reunion, transforming it into a public spectacle so I cannot quietly turn them away without looking like a monster. Dana freezes, her eyes darting nervously down the hallway toward me. She does not know the history, but she recognizes apex predators when they breach the perimeter. I do not panic. I do not freeze. I hand the remaining briefs to my paralegal with a steady hand. I reach up and methodically adjust the crisp cuffs of my white silk shirt, ensuring the gold links are perfectly aligned. Then, I begin to walk down the long, sunlit corridor toward the reception area. I do not rush. I do not jog. I walk with the heavy, deliberate cadence of a woman who has spent 7 years hunting the exact kind of monsters currently standing in her lobby. I have never lived as prey, and I refuse to start today. As I step into the open reception area, the silence becomes absolute. The 2 waiting clients pretend to read their magazines, but their attention is entirely locked on the standoff. Preston straightens his spine as I approach. He expects me to flinch. He expects the ghost of the terrified 29-year-old girl he threw out onto the street to surface in my eyes. I give him absolutely nothing. I stop exactly 3 feet from the reception desk, planting my heels into the carpet, crossing my arms loosely over my chest. "Preston," I say. My voice is flat, devoid of a single ounce of warmth or surprise. "Elaine? Nolan?" I do not acknowledge the stranger. Preston's jaw tightens. My lack of emotional reaction disrupts his script. He recovers quickly, reaching into his tailored jacket and withdrawing a thick, heavy legal folder. He slams it down onto the marble counter with a loud, aggressive thud. I look down. The cover page is printed on heavy bond paper. It bears the exact logo and letterhead of Satterfield Row Legal. Below my own firm's crest is a bold, undeniable title: Draft Amendment to Corporate Governance and Management Structure. "You have done a quaint little job setting up this office, Miranda," Preston says, his voice dripping with condescension. "But it is time for adults to steer the ship. I am stepping in." That document outlines my immediate appointment as managing partner, effective today. The sheer audacity of the demand hangs in the air, heavy and suffocating. He is not asking for a job. He is not asking for a favor. He is attempting a hostile takeover of a business he had absolutely zero part in building, in the middle of a Tuesday morning, in front of my staff and clients. Before I can dissect the legal impossibility of his demand, Elaine steps forward, She glides away from Preston's side and begins a slow, deliberate pacing around the reception area. She runs a manicured finger along the edge of a frosted glass partition, checking for invisible dust. It really is a charming space, darling, Elaine coos. Her voice is a melody of subtle insults. A bit sterile, perhaps. It feels very temporary, like a pop-up shop. But I suppose you had to work with whatever budget you could scrape together. It will be so much better once your father brings in proper decorators to reflect our true standing in this city. She looks at me with wide, mock-sympathetic eyes. She is trying to shrink me. She is trying to reduce my grueling, blood-soaked 7-year climb to the top of the legal food chain into a cute little hobby that her husband is now generously rescuing. I shift my gaze to Nolan. My little brother is standing near a towering potted ficus. He's wearing a suit that looks one size too big, sweating slightly at the temples. He refuses to meet my eyes. He stares relentlessly at the tips of his highly polished shoes. He knows exactly what this is, and the guilt is practically vibrating off his skin. He is the weak link in their armor, but I file that information away for later. My attention finally locks onto the fourth man, the stranger introduced as Camden Vale. He has not spoken a single word. While Preston blusters and Elaine performs her toxic interior design critique, Camden is working. His head barely moves, but his eyes are darting with terrifying efficiency. I watch his gaze track the ceiling. He spots the primary security camera above the elevator bank. He spots the secondary dome camera positioned over the filing room entrance. He counts the exits. He measures the distance between the reception desk and the inner office doors. He looks at Dana's computer screen, trying to read the open scheduling software. He assesses the 2 clients on the sofa, noting their attire and probable net worth. Camden is not here to be a heavy, he is not here to yell. He is here to calculate. He is a tactician brought in to measure the structural integrity of my fortress before they bring out the battering rams. I do not know what kind of fever dream brought you up to the 24th floor, I finally say, keeping my voice low and dangerous, forcing Preston to lean in to hear me. But Satterfield Row Legal is a privately held entity. You have 0 equity, 0 standing, and exactly 1 minute to get out of my lobby before I have building security escort you out in handcuffs. Preston does not back down. Instead, a slow, predatory smile spreads across his face. It is the smile of a man who holds a royal flush and is just waiting for the bets to pile up. He taps his index finger against the thick folder he just threw on the desk. "Read the paperwork, Miranda," Preston whispers, his eyes gleaming with malicious triumph. "Security cannot throw out the owner." I do not blink at the heavy folder Preston slammed onto the marble counter. I reach out, my fingers grazing the thick, premium cardstock cover, and flip it open. The first page is a dense labyrinth of legalese, but my eyes automatically bypass the standard boilerplate and jump straight to the defined terms. A corporate entity jumps off the page, bolded and underlined, Blue Glen Advisory. That is the name of the phantom entity staring back at me. I read the opening paragraphs, my mind instantly shifting into the cold, analytical space I usually reserve for hostile witnesses on the stand. Preston does not give me time to process the text in silence. He steps closer, his expensive, heavy cologne mixing with the sterile, air-conditioned breeze of the lobby. Blue Glen Advisory provided the seed capital that kept your lights on during the first 3 years of this little venture, Preston states. His voice is a rich, practiced baritone, carrying just enough resonance to make sure Dana and the 2 high-net-worth clients sitting nearby hear every single syllable. You operated under the delusion that Evelyn Rowe financed your rise out of the goodness of her heart. She did not. She secured a massive promissory note through Blue Glen to keep this place afloat. I ignore his theatrical delivery and focus entirely on the mechanics of the document in my hands. It is a masterclass in corporate extortion. According to the clauses buried deep on page 4, the moment Satterfield Row Legal crosses a specific gross revenue threshold, a financial milestone we officially surpassed exactly 3 weeks ago, the debt does not just accrue a higher interest rate. It triggers an automatic, non-negotiable conversion. It grants the holder of the note the irrevocable right to demand immediate administrative control of the firm, explicitly including the executive seat of managing partner. Preston leans forward, dropping the performative volume and switching to a surgical, venomous whisper. "You are going to sign the execution page today. Miranda, right now," he commands. "If you refuse, by 12 noon, I will have the firm's primary line of credit frozen solid. I will trigger an immediate, invasive compliance review with your malpractice insurance carrier. And I will make absolutely certain that every single client on your roster receives a very polite, very concerning advisory email detailing a severe ownership dispute. Your practice will bleed to death before the weekend." Before I can formulate a verbal counterattack, the hyper-polite stranger, Camden Vale, steps out of the periphery. He moves without making a sound, his posture non-threatening but his eyes dead and calculating. "We have also prepared a comprehensive press release," Camden adds. His tone is terrifyingly smooth, devoid of malice but dripping with calculated leverage. It outlines a tragic but necessary family intervention to save a failing legal practice from internal mismanagement. "We would much rather issue a joint statement of cooperation, provided you choose not to be combative." I do not look at Camden. I do not acknowledge his veiled threat. My eyes flick back to the paperwork. I turn the heavy pages until I reach the final signature block. There it is, the supposed proof of my undoing. It is the signature of Evelyn Rowe. The black ink shows the sharp, aggressive loops of the capital E and the violent, distinctive underline beneath the R. To an untrained eye, or to a panicked, cornered victim, it looks absolutely perfect. But then I look at the date inked neatly beside her name. October 14th. A wave of cold, absolute clarity washes over my brain, extinguishing any residual shock I might have felt. I know exactly where Evelyn Rowe was on October 14th of that specific year. She was not sitting in a corporate boardroom signing seed funding agreements with shadow advisories. She was entirely unconscious in a sterile, brightly lit post-operative recovery ward at Bellmere General Hospital. She had just survived a brutal, 12-hour arterial bypass surgery. I know this as a hard, undeniable fact because I sat in a rigid plastic chair next to her bed for 2 straight days, watching the steady, rhythmic spike of her heart monitor while holding her cold hand. This is not a desperate family reunion. This is not my father having a sudden, erratic burst of patriarchal dominance. This is a meticulously engineered corporate hijacking. They forged Evelyn's signature. They built a fake debt vehicle out of thin air. They waited patiently until my firm became a lethal threat in the Marston Corridor litigation. And now they are using this fabricated leverage to decapitate my leadership and kill my lawsuit from the inside. Panic is the exact reaction they are waiting for. They want me to scream. They want me to tear the document into shreds. They want me to demand that building security throw them out, creating a massive, hysterical scene that proves to my staff and my clients that I am erratic, emotional, and entirely unfit to lead a high-stakes law firm. I deny them that satisfaction. I close the folder smoothly, aligning its edges perfectly with the polished marble counter. I look directly into my father's eyes. "This is a very dense proposal," I say. My tone is entirely stripped of emotion, hollowed out and terrifyingly flat. "It requires a proper setting to discuss. Please, follow me to the main conference room." I do not wait for their agreement. I turn my back on them, a highly calculated display of dominance, and begin walking down the main hallway. I hear their expensive leather shoes trailing closely behind me. I lead them past the rows of paralegal cubicles, past the open doors of my junior associates, directly into the massive, glass-walled conference room located at the far end of the corridor. It is essentially a giant glass box suspended high over the Bellmere River. Every single employee in my firm can see exactly what is happening inside. The glass walls offer complete, unavoidable visual transparency. What Preston, Elaine, Nolan, and Camden do not know is that Halcyon Center Management upgraded the entire security infrastructure last quarter. The room is not merely soundproof from the outside hallway. It is hardwired directly into the building's secure, time-stamped audio and video retention matrix, a system specifically designed to handle legally compliant deposition recordings. Every single breath they take, every threat they vocalize, every piece of fraudulent leverage they attempt to wield is now becoming a permanent, admissible, and court-ready record. Preston struts into the room, a smug, victorious smirk playing on his lips. He fundamentally misunderstands the situation. He thinks my invitation is a white flag. He thinks the transparent glass walls are my humiliating way of showing submission to my entire staff. He walks straight to the head of the long, polished oak table and takes the heavy leather chair, immediately treating it as his own executive throne. Elaine sits delicately beside him, arranging her cashmere wrap with practiced elegance. Camden positions himself near the heavy wooden door, acting as a silent sentinel, cutting off the exit. Nolan slumps into a chair near the corner, crossing his arms and refusing to look up from the table. I take a seat at the opposite end of the table, facing my father. The physical distance between us feels like a sprawling battlefield. I slide my phone out of my jacket pocket, keeping it carefully shielded below the thick edge of the heavy table. While Preston begins to pontificate loudly about the new operational standards and billing quotas he plans to implement by the end of the week, I open a secure, encrypted communication channel with Tessa Keats, my chief operating officer. My fingers fly across the digital keyboard with practiced, invisible speed. I type a single, precise directive. Pull archive signatures, founding minutes, metadata. Quietly, I hit send. I slip the device back into my pocket and fold my hands neatly on top of the polished wood. I look at the man who erased me from his life 7 years ago, watching him bask in the absolute illusion of his own victory. The trap is now officially armed. The recording light in the ceiling is blinking a steady, invisible red, and my family has just walked perfectly into the center of the kill zone. The silence inside the glass walls of the conference room is heavy, but it is no longer the silence of an ambush. It is the silence of a dissection. Preston realizes that his initial shock and awe tactic failed to produce the hysterical submission he anticipated, like a seasoned predator shifting its angle of attack. He immediately recalibrates his demeanor. The aggressive, booming dictator vanishes, replaced instantly by the benevolent, deeply concerned patriarch. He leans back in the heavy leather executive chair, steepling his fingers beneath his chin. His tone drops an octave, becoming soft and sickeningly reasonable. "We do not have to do this the hard way, Miranda," Preston says, offering a practiced sigh of paternal exhaustion. "If you sign the administrative transfer today, we can put all of this ugliness behind us. The family will welcome you back. We will keep everything entirely quiet. Satterfield Row. Legal will continue to operate just as it does right now. You even get to keep your name on the door. I will simply step in to provide the high-level oversight and capital management that a firm of this size desperately requires." Elaine catches her cue perfectly. She leans forward, resting her perfectly manicured hand on the polished oak table, her face twisting into a mask of profound maternal sorrow. "We only want to bring the firm back to its rightful bloodline," Elaine murmurs, her voice catching with artificial emotion. "You have worked so hard, darling, but you have been alone for so long. Let us help you carry this burden. Let us make Satterfield Row a true family legacy." I look at the two of them, and for a fleeting second, I almost admire the sheer sociopathic brilliance of their performance. They are offering me a gilded cage constructed entirely out of leverage they manufactured, but the core of their entire presentation is built on a fatal miscalculation. They assume I do not know the exact origin of my own firm. They believe Evelyn Rowe injected cash into my practice, leaving behind a paper trail they could manipulate. They are wrong. Evelyn never gave me a single dime of seed capital. There was never a loan. There was never a promissory note. When I took over the firm, Evelyn utilized a highly confidential, seller-financed equity transfer. It was a complex, ironclad legal mechanism where I bought her shares using a percentage of my future billable hours, drafted under attorney-client privilege and locked in a secure vault. Blue Glen Advisory never existed in my financial history because outside capital never existed in my financial history. My phone vibrates against my thigh, a single, sharp pulse. I keep my eyes fixed on my father while I casually slip my hand into my pocket, pressing the biometric scanner to unlock the screen. I slide the phone out just enough to view it below the edge of the table. It is a secure message from Tessa Keats. My chief operating officer is a former intelligence analyst, and she works with terrifying speed. Tessa's message is a masterclass in digital forensics. She cross-referenced the digital fingerprint of the promissory note Preston emailed to my general inbox 10 minutes prior with our actual, encrypted corporate archives. The results are damning. Tessa writes that the PDF file they are using as a weapon was not drafted years ago. The metadata proves the document was created exactly 43 hours ago. Furthermore, the device identifier stamped into the file's creation history matches a laptop registered to a proprietary network node, a node currently active on the device sitting inside the leather briefcase of Camden Vale. But Tessa did not stop at the metadata. She ran a pixel density check on the signature block itself. Evelyn Rowe's signature was not organically written on that document. It was digitally lifted from a public charity gala fundraising brochure printed 5 years ago. Tessa's software detected the microscopic edge-smoothing algorithms Camden used to blend the stolen signature into the white background of the forged note. It was a decent graphic design trick, entirely sufficient to terrify a careless lawyer, but it instantly falls apart under a basic forensic review. I absorb this information without letting a single muscle in my face twitch. I am dealing with amateurs who think they are playing a grandmaster's game. Before Preston can demand an answer to his generous offer, the heavy wooden door of the conference room swings open. It is not my assistant. It is Owen Mercer. Owen is the general counsel and head of security operations for the entire Halcyon Center Tower. He is a tall, imposing man with an impeccable tailored suit and the quiet, dangerous aura of a former federal prosecutor. Owen does not barge in. He steps into the room with infuriating calmness, holding a silver tray with a fresh pitcher of ice water and several crystal glasses. "My apologies for the interruption, Ms. Satterfield," Owen says, his voice perfectly level, radiating professional courtesy. "Your receptionist mentioned you had unexpected guests. I wanted to ensure everyone was properly accommodated." Preston bristles at the intrusion. He hates having his stage invaded by anyone he does not control. "We are in the middle of a highly confidential partners meeting," Preston snaps. "We do not need water." Owen ignores him entirely. He walks straight to my end of the table, deliberately placing a glass of water down near my right hand. As he leans in, he does not look at me, but his voice drops to a frequency that only I can hear. "Your perimeter was breached under false pretenses," Owen whispers quickly. The polite gentleman by the door used a visitor badge that was flagged. He registered at the security desk downstairs as a document courier carrying privileged filings for your mailroom. He lied on a federal building access log. Owen straightens up, offering a polite nod to the room before stepping back. He does not leave. He takes a quiet stance near the corner of the room, folding his arms. He is silently observing the players, asserting the building's jurisdictional authority over the space. Camden shifts uncomfortably near the door, realizing instantly that his tactical anonymity has been compromised. Preston, oblivious to the silent communication that just occurred, decides he has given me enough time to ponder my surrender. He leans forward, dropping the benevolent father routine, his impatience bleeding through the polished veneer. "I am a busy man, Miranda, and my patience is entirely exhausted," Preston barks, tapping the table with a heavy gold ring. "You are going to sign the management transfer right now. We need to stabilize this firm immediately, especially considering the massive liability you are dragging this office into with the Marston Corridor plaintiff deposition scheduled for Thursday morning. A firm in administrative chaos cannot handle a sworn testimony of that magnitude. I am stepping in to protect the asset." The room goes absolutely still. I do not breathe. I do not move. I let his words hang in the air, echoing against the glass walls. Preston thinks he just delivered a brilliant, strategic rationale for his takeover. He thinks he just proved he's already thinking like a managing partner. He does not realize he just slit his own throat. The deposition schedule for the Marston corridor litigation is under strict judicial seal. It is a highly guarded secret. The only people who know that I am deposing the lead dummy executive on Thursday morning are the federal judge, my immediate legal team, and the shadow defendants who are desperately trying to hide behind their corporate shields. The public does not know. The press does not know. There is absolutely no legal way Preston Satterfield could know the exact day and time of that specific deposition unless he is directly involved with the defense. The final blinding piece of the puzzle locks into place inside my mind. My heart slows down to a steady, glacial rhythm. I finally see the entire board. This elaborate ambush has absolutely nothing to do with reclaiming a lost daughter. It has nothing to do with saving a law firm or protecting a family legacy. It is not about pride, and it is not about control of my business. Satterfield Row. Legal is merely collateral damage. They forged a document. They risked federal wire fraud. They orchestrated a hostile corporate invasion of my office, all for one singular purpose. They need to get inside my internal network. If Preston assumes the role of managing partner, even for 48 hours, he gains unrestricted, legally sanctioned access to every single confidential file, strategy memo, and piece of digital evidence I have compiled in the Marston corridor case. He intends to use my own firm's infrastructure to destroy my client's lawsuit from the inside, protecting his hidden real estate empire. He does not want my firm. He wants my case. I look at my father, studying the arrogant, impatient sneer on his face. He thinks he has me backed into a corner, suffocated by his manufactured debt and his threats of public ruin. He has no idea that he just handed me the very weapon I need to utterly destroy him. The pieces of the board finally align in my mind, forming a picture so ruthless it borders on majestic. Preston Satterfield did not build his empire by being stupid. He built it by being invisible. West Haven Redevelopment Group, his crown jewel, has always operated through a labyrinth of subsidiaries. I trace the mental map I have been meticulously building for 6 months. West Haven owns a holding company, which funds a private equity venture, which in turn acts as the primary shareholder for Marston Corridor Holdings. They are the shadow defendants, and my father is terrified. If Preston manages to wedge himself into the managing partner seat of Satterfield Row Legal, even for a mere 24 hours, the collateral damage to my client would be catastrophic. He does not need to stay in power permanently. He only needs to exist on the letterhead long enough to trigger a massive, fatal conflict of interest. The moment a hidden defendant takes administrative control of the plaintiff's legal representation, the presiding judge would have no choice but to halt the proceedings. Preston could forcibly delay the discovery phase, access our highly guarded interrogation strategies, and irreparably shatter the trust of the plaintiffs I represent. He wants to kill the lawsuit by infecting the host. My quiet contemplation is broken by a subtle shift in the room's dynamic. Owen Mercer, still standing quietly by the frosted glass wall, reaches into his tailored jacket. He pulls out a sleek, matte black phone. He does not break his professional posture, but his eyes scan a fresh notification. I watch the slight, almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw. The general counsel of the Halcyon Center does not get rattled by standard building maintenance alerts. Owen steps forward, gliding silently to the edge of the polished oak table. He leans down, pretending to adjust the silver water pitcher, and speaks in a voice calibrated to reach only my ears. "My legal department just flagged a high-priority filing," Owen murmurs, his tone laced with clinical urgency. "Blue Glen Advisory executed a commercial lien notice against your firm's operational receivables at exactly 8 o'clock this morning. They served the notice to the building's commercial registry." The sheer malice of the maneuver sends a cold electric thrill down my spine. A commercial lien on my receivables means every single dollar my clients pay into our accounts is now legally frozen, held hostage by a phantom debt. This lien is entirely predicated on the forged promissory note currently sitting on my conference table. They are not just trying to steal the steering wheel of my business. They have simultaneously slashed the tires and cut the fuel line. It is a synchronized, two-pronged siege. They intend to choke the cash flow to induce panic, and then offer the administrative takeover as the only viable lifeline to save the staff's payroll. I give Owen a fractional nod of understanding. He steps back, folding his arms, transforming back into the silent guardian of the building's integrity. But the atmosphere in the room is shifting. The thick, suffocating pressure Preston intended to apply is beginning to leak. The hyper-polite stranger, Camden Vale, is a man who deals in predictable human reactions. He expects a cornered business owner to yell, to cry, or to immediately summon their internal counsel in a blind panic. My absolute, stone-cold silence is a variable he did not program into his algorithm. Camden shifts his weight from his left foot to his right. The smooth, unbothered facade cracks just a fraction of an inch. He looks at Preston, then at me, and clears his throat. Perhaps the environment here is too exposed for a delicate family negotiation, Camden suggests. His voice has lost its oily smoothness, replaced by a tight, clipped urgency. Mr. Satterfield, I strongly advise we pause this discussion. We should leave the premises and invite Miranda to speak with us in a private, neutral location. Camden smells the trap. He knows that when the prey stops fighting the snare, it usually means the predator has wandered into a minefield. He wants to extract his client before the situation detonates. Preston, entirely blinded by his own hubris, swats his hired tactician away with a dismissive wave of his hand. Nonsense. We are not going anywhere until she signs the paperwork. Preston barks, his face flushing with irritation. She is just being stubborn. It is a childish trait she never outgrew. Dad, the word is barely a whisper, but in the echoing acoustics of the glass conference room, it sounds like a gunshot. Everyone turns to look at Nolan. My younger brother is sitting rigidly in his chair, his face entirely drained of color. He is staring at the forged promissory note sitting on the table as if it is a venomous snake preparing to strike. His hands are trembling slightly against his knees. Dad, this was not supposed to go this far, Nolan blurts out, his voice cracking with unfiltered panic. You said we were just going to squeeze her credit line. You said we were just going to make her negotiate a settlement for the Marston issue. You never said we were walking in here to take over the whole firm. This is crazy. The script shatters. The immaculate, unified front of the Satterfield family fractures wide open, exposing the rotting core beneath the surface. Nolan just confessed, on a recorded building surveillance matrix, that the primary objective of this extortion attempt is directly tied to the Marston corridor litigation. Elaine reacts with terrifying speed. She snaps her head toward her son, her perfectly constructed mask of maternal sorrow disintegrating into a look of absolute, venomous fury. Shut your mouth this instant, Nolan, Elaine hisses, her voice vibrating with a chilling, metallic edge. She reaches under the table, and though I cannot see it, I know she just dug her manicured nails deep into his arm. You do not understand the complexities of corporate restructuring. You will remain silent until you are spoken to. Nolan flinches, his shoulders collapsing inward, but the damage is already done. The words are out in the open air. Camden takes a sharp step away from the door, his professional distance evaporating. He realizes the operation has just been fatally compromised by the client's own flesh and blood. He looks at me, waiting for the explosion. He expects me to stand up, point a finger, and scream for the police. He expects me to use this massive unforced error to throw them out into the hallway in disgrace. I do absolutely nothing of the sort. I slowly reach out and pick up my crystal water glass. I take a calm, measured sip, letting the cold water soothe my throat. I place the glass back onto the table, aligning it perfectly with the edge of my legal pad. I do not want them to leave. Not yet. If I kick them out now, they can regroup. They can hire better lawyers, draft better lies, and launch a more sophisticated assault from the shadows. I want them right here, sitting under the invisible red recording light of the Halcyon Center security matrix. I want them breathing the air of a room where every single syllable is tethered to an immutable digital timestamp. They brought a forged document, a fraudulent lien, and a conspiracy to commit witness interference into my sanctuary. Nolan makes an interesting point, I say, my voice perfectly level, stripping the emotional weight from the air. Let us talk about the credit lines. Let us talk about the Marston issue. If you want me to sign away my life's work, Preston, I need to understand the exact architecture of your demands. Please, explain to me exactly how you plan to manage my client roster. I lean forward, resting my chin on my steepled fingers, mirroring the exact posture my father assumed 10 minutes ago. I am opening the door to the vault, inviting them to step inside and lock themselves in. They wanted a performance. I am going to let them sing until their throats bleed. Preston takes the bait with the eagerness of a starving animal. He leans forward, resting his forearms on the polished oak table, completely oblivious to the digital guillotine suspended directly above his neck. I will manage your client roster by implementing a strict triage protocol, he begins, his voice regaining its booming, authoritative cadence. We will immediately file continuances on your major litigation files, specifically the Marston corridor case, to allow for a proper transition of leadership. I will personally review all discovery materials and witness lists to ensure we are not exposed to unnecessary risk. He is confessing his precise intent to tamper with a federal lawsuit, and he genuinely thinks he is giving a masterclass in corporate management. I do not interrupt him. I let him dig the grave deeper. While he pontificates, I look down at my phone, shielded safely beneath the thick edge of the table. Tessa has sent a new, encrypted forensic breakdown. The initial metadata pull confirmed the forgery, but Tessa went deeper, tracing the exact origin of the data leak that allowed Camden Vale to construct this elaborate trap in the first place. Satterfield Row Legal is a fortress. We use biometric access protocols, partitioned servers, and heavily encrypted client portals. Camden could not have brute forced his way into our digital archives to find Evelyn's old signature or the internal financial metrics they used to craft the fake loan threshold. Someone had to open a door from the inside. The glowing screen displays a name, Graham Pike. The air in my lungs turns to ice. Graham was my chief of operations. He was also my fiancé. Exactly 6 months ago, I unceremoniously fired him and broke our engagement in the same breath. During a routine quarterly audit, I discovered a series of artificially inflated vendor invoices. He was skimming money from the firm to cover private gambling debts. When I confronted him, he did not apologize. He simply handed over his security keys, packed his office, and walked out without looking back. I thought I had completely excised the infection. I was wrong. According to Tessa's server logs, Graham did not leave empty-handed. He possessed a master administrative key to a legacy archive server that we were in the process of decommissioning. He kept that back door open, and he sold the access credentials directly to Camden Vale. This revelation fundamentally shifts the architecture of the battlefield. This is not a sudden, erratic power grab by an angry, controlling father. This is a meticulously funded, months-long corporate espionage campaign. They have been mapping my defenses, studying my financials, and waiting in the shadows for half a year. The betrayal is a sharp, jagged blade slipping right between my ribs. Graham knew exactly how hard I fought to build this sanctuary. He knew the profound nightmares I had about my family, and he sold me to them for a quiet payout. I forced the pain down, locking it into the dark, heavy iron box at the back of my mind. I cannot afford the luxury of a broken heart right now. I have a war to win. I shift my gaze away from my phone and look directly at Nolan. My younger brother is sweating profusely, his eyes darting frantically between Preston and the forged document sitting on the table. He is drowning in his own guilt. A sudden memory clicks into place. Exactly 3 weeks ago, my secure inbox received a string of encrypted messages from a burner email account. The subject lines were entirely blank. The body of the emails contained a single, repeating warning: do not trust any document tied to Blue Glen. I had instructed Tessa to trace the Internet Protocol address, but the sender utilized a highly sophisticated bouncing proxy that masked their true location. Now, watching the absolute terror radiating from Nolan, the disparate pieces snapped together with perfect clarity. You sent the emails. Did you not, Nolan? I ask. My voice is quiet, but it slices right through Preston's loud, self-important monologue. Preston stops mid-sentence, his jaw hanging open in sheer confusion. Elaine gasps, her hand flying to her throat as her carefully constructed mask of elegance slips. Nolan jerks his head up, his face entirely drained of color. He looks like a man who just stepped on a landmine and heard the mechanical click beneath his boot. I do not know what you are talking about, Nolan stammers, his voice barely a terrified squeak. 3 weeks ago. A burner account, I press, leaning forward, ignoring my parents entirely to focus all my analytical weight on him. You warned me. You told me not to trust Blue Glen. You knew they were building this fraudulent architecture. You knew they bought stolen archive data from Graham. But you lacked the courage to confront Preston directly, so you sent anonymous warnings, hoping I would figure it out before they breached the perimeter. Nolan crumbles under the intense pressure. The heavy burden of his complicity shatters him completely. I thought it was just a leverage play, he blurts out, his words tumbling over each other in a desperate, panicked rush. Dad told me he was only going to use the fabricated debt to squeeze your operating capital. He said if we applied enough financial pressure, you would come to the table and negotiate a settlement for the Marston corridor case. I swear to God, Miranda, I did not know the actual objective was to walk in here and seize administrative control of your firm. I did not know he planned to kill the lawsuit from the inside. This is a suicide mission. Nolan, you absolute idiot. Shut your mouth this instant, Elaine screams, her voice vibrating with a chilling, metallic fury. She stands up violently, her heavy chair scraping aggressively against the floor, looking as though she is about to physically strike him across the face. It is too late. The confession is out in the open air, echoing off the thick glass walls. I evaluate my brother with cold, clinical precision. He is a coward, and he is entirely complicit in the extortion. But he is also the fatal flaw in their master plan. If he testifies to this exact sequence of events in a sworn deposition, their entire manufactured reality burns to ash. He is the wedge I will use to split them apart. Owen Mercer, who has been standing near the glass wall like a silent shadow, takes a slow, deliberate step toward the table. He does not address my father. He does not address my mother. He addresses me, maintaining his clinical, unyielding authority. Ms. Satterfield, Owen says, his voice carrying the immense weight of the Halcyon Center's absolute legal jurisdiction. Based on the physical evidence currently resting on your conference table and the verbal admissions just recorded in this room, we have crossed a severe legal threshold. I am legally obligated to inform you that the actions demonstrated here today require immediate referral to the Financial Integrity Unit of Bellmere. Owen pauses, letting the absolute severity of his statement sink into the minds of the intruders. The Financial Integrity Unit is the most feared regulatory body in the state, possessing the unilateral power to freeze assets, strip professional licenses, and initiate federal criminal prosecutions without warning. The presentation of a forged instrument, Owen continues, listing the charges with cold, methodical precision, coercive business interference, fraudulent lien abuse, and the attempted unauthorized access to privileged client matters. These are not internal family disputes, Mr. Satterfield. These are severe, prosecutable felonies. Camden Vale finally loses his manufactured, hyper-polite calm. The realization that his lucrative career and his personal freedom are rapidly evaporating hits him. He lunges forward, reaching aggressively across the polished oak table to grab the heavy legal folder containing the forged promissory note. "We are leaving," Camden snaps, his voice laced with pure, unfiltered panic. "This meeting is over. Do not touch that folder. I command. My tone is not elevated, but it possesses the absolute, chilling authority of a judge handing down an execution order. I do not break eye contact with Camden as I pull my phone out from beneath the table and place it flat on the wood. I speak clearly, ensuring the room's hidden audio matrix captures every single syllable perfectly. Tessa, execute a full operational lockdown immediately. Seal the metadata reports. Preserve the server logs proving Graham Pike's archive breach. Do not let a single byte of data be deleted. I turn my head slightly to look at the General Counsel. Owen, I formally request that Halcyon Center Security secure all visitor badge scans, lock down the lobby access logs, and retain every single second of surveillance footage from the exact moment these individuals walked through the ground floor revolving doors. The air in the conference room turns to heavy, suffocating lead. Preston's arrogant, victorious sneer dissolves into a mask of dawning, absolute horror. They marched up to the 24th floor believing they were the apex predators, orchestrating a brilliant, inescapable ambush against a weak, isolated woman. They did not realize that from the very second they crossed my threshold, I was simply allowing them to build the steel cage around themselves. Camden Vale understands immediately that the physical ambush has failed. The meticulously constructed trap inside the conference room has collapsed under the weight of his own client's incompetence and my refusal to submit. But Camden is a professional corporate saboteur. He does not apologize, and he does not retreat. He simply shifts his weight, pulls a sleek silver tablet from his leather briefcase, and transitions to the secondary objective. If they cannot legally seize the steering wheel of my firm, they will detonate the entire vehicle with me inside it. He begins tapping the screen with practiced, lethal speed. He is not messaging for an extraction. He is initiating a scorched earth protocol designed to destroy my reputation in the open market. Within 3 minutes, the invisible artillery shells begin to land. I am standing near my desk when Tessa bursts through the heavy oak door of my private office. She does not bother to knock. Her face is an unreadable mask of pure, concentrated adrenaline. She drops a thick, freshly printed dossier onto my desk. They just opened a war on 3 separate fronts, Tessa announces, her voice tight and urgent. A digital client concern packet was just mass emailed to our top 3 billing accounts. It is heavily formatted to look like a whistleblower leak from inside our own accounting department. I open the dossier. The packet is a masterpiece of malicious fiction. It outlines a severe, undisclosed ownership dispute, implying that Satterfield Row Legal is secretly beholden to hidden investors who are currently demanding immediate liquidation of our assets. It is explicitly designed to make my most valuable clients believe their sensitive legal files and escrow accounts are caught in the middle of a catastrophic financial collapse. That is not the only fire, Tessa continues, swiping across her own tablet. A local digital publication that specializes in corporate scandals just posted an anonymous editorial. The headline explicitly names you. It claims Satterfield Row Legal is on the brink of total operational failure due to severe family control litigation. They are trying to create a massive public panic to force your clients to abandon you. They want me to run around with a bucket of water, desperately trying to extinguish each individual blaze. They want me exhausted, reactive, and terrified, but before I can even formulate a directive for Tessa, the door to my office opens again. It is June Halper. June is one of the firm's most significant clients. She is a formidable, sharp-eyed widow who took over a struggling local diner and ruthlessly expanded it into a massive, highly lucrative regional restaurant chain. She was sitting in my reception area when my family staged their theatrical entrance. Protocol dictates that in the event of a severe office disruption, high-net-worth clients are immediately escorted to the private elevators for their own comfort. June Halper, however, refused to leave. She demanded to be seated in my private office to wait out the storm. June walked slowly toward my desk, leaning heavily on her silver-handled cane. Her sharp eyes are fixed on the hallway outside my glass wall, tracking the retreating figure of Camden Vale as he paces near the elevator bank. "I know that man," June says. Her voice is a whoosh, gravelly rasp, utterly devoid of fear. I look up from the smear packet. You know Camden Vale? I know his methods, June corrects me, turning her piercing gaze toward me. 1 year ago, right after my husband passed away, a private equity group tried to force a hostile buyout of my restaurant chain. They sent a man who looked and spoke exactly like him. He sat in my living room and offered me a deal he called a restructure for protection. It was a labyrinth of predatory loans and hidden equity transfers wrapped up in extremely polite threats. He is a cleaner for corporate vultures. He dismantles businesses from the inside out. June's presence is an unbelievable tactical advantage. She is not just a victim of their smear campaign. She is a highly credible, independent witness who can testify to Camden's established pattern of predatory business interference. She chose to stay, and by doing so, she just became the strongest piece of armor I have. Tessa's computer chimes with a high-priority security alert. She practically dives across the room to look at the monitor. They hit the bank, Tessa says, her fingers flying across the keyboard to trace the origin of the alert. I just intercepted an emergency default advisory sent to Crest Union Commercial. That is the institution holding our primary expansion credit line. The email informs the bank that we are in breach of our financial covenants and requests an immediate freeze on all outbound wire transfers. I walk over to the monitor. The email looks incredibly authentic. It carries my firm's exact logo, the correct routing numbers, and my personal signature block. But when I look closely at the sender address, the deception reveals itself. Look at the domain, I tell Tessa, pointing at the screen. They spoofed it. They swapped the lowercase l in legal for an uppercase I to an automated banking filter. It looks like an internal directive. It is designed to choke our cash flow before the bank's fraud department can flag the discrepancy. The pressure in the room is immense, practically vibrating against the walls. The attacks are coming from every possible vector. But I do not feel panic. I feel an absolute, terrifying clarity. I do not run toward the individual fires. I step back and look at the entire arsonist's blueprint. I walk over to the glass whiteboard mounted on my wall. I uncap a black marker and begin writing. I write down the forged promissory note. I write down the false commercial lien. I list the spoofed lender advisory sent to Crest Union Commercial. I document the defamatory client smear packet. I write down the attempted infiltration of the Marston Corridor plaintiff files. When I step back, it is no longer a chaotic series of family disputes. It is a highly organized, legally definable pattern of racketeering, wire fraud, and witness intimidation. They handed me a complete, perfectly documented criminal conspiracy on a silver platter. The heavy door creaks open one more time. It is Nolan. My younger brother looks physically ill. His tailored suit is wrinkled, and his face is shining with cold sweat. He has finally realized that Preston led him into a federal trap, and his only chance of survival is to jump from the burning ship. He walks toward my desk with trembling hands. He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a cheap plastic burner phone. He places it softly onto my polished desk. I cannot go to prison for him, Miranda, Nolan whispers, his voice cracking with sheer terror. I cannot do it. I pick up the device. The screen is already unlocked, displaying an encrypted group chat between Preston, Elaine, Camden, and Nolan. I scroll up through the timeline, reading the absolute arrogance of their planning, and then I find it, the golden bullet. It is a message sent by Preston Satterfield exactly 2 days ago. It reads, "Temporary control gets us inside. Once inside, her case dies." It is a written, undeniable confession of his direct intent to sabotage a federal lawsuit. It is the exact piece of evidence required to destroy his entire defense. I look at Nolan, offering him no comfort, only the cold reality of the situation. He has betrayed our father to save himself, but he has also handed me the sword I will use to cut the Satterfield empire to pieces before I can secure the burner phone in my safe. The intercom on my desk buzzes loudly. It is Dana, my receptionist, and her voice is tight with disbelief. "Miranda," Dana says over the speaker, "your father is standing in the middle of the lobby. He is making a public announcement to the entire floor." I step out of my office and walk briskly down the hallway. Preston is standing near the glass entrance doors, his chest puffed out, radiating the desperate, furious energy of a dictator who refuses to acknowledge his empire is crumbling. He sees me approaching and raises his voice, ensuring every paralegal, associate, and visiting client hears his declaration. "You think you can hide behind your security guards and your locked doors?" Preston shouts, his polished veneer completely gone, replaced by raw, ugly desperation. "You are running this family legacy into the ground. I will not allow it. At 5 o'clock this afternoon, I am holding a press conference in the main media briefing suite on the ground floor. I have already invited the local financial press. I am going to reclaim this firm for the family, and I will expose your gross mismanagement to the entire city." He thinks the threat of public humiliation will break me. He thinks the bright lights of the media cameras will force me to surrender to protect my fragile reputation. He does not understand that I'm not afraid of the light. I have spent the last 7 years building a fortress that thrives in the absolute truth. I look at my father, surrounded by the echoes of his own fabricated power. I do not argue. I do not raise my voice. 5 o'clock, I say, my voice carrying the calm, absolute certainty of an executioner. I will see you there. The descent in the glass elevator feels like a countdown to an execution. I do not file an emergency injunction to halt the press conference. I do not send building security to clear the ground floor. I let the event proceed exactly as my father designed it. Men who have spent their entire lives manipulating the truth behind closed mahogany doors possess a fatal vulnerability. They begin to believe their own illusions. They only experience absolute defeat when they are forced to lie under the bright, unforgiving lights in front of the exact people who hold the empirical proof of their perjury. At exactly 5 o'clock, the elevator doors slide open. I step into the massive, high-ceilinged media briefing suite of the Halcyon Center. I do not walk in alone. I have assembled a firing squad. Tessa Keats flanks my left, holding an encrypted tablet containing the entire digital forensic ledger of the morning's attack. Owen Mercer walks to my right, representing the unyielding institutional weight of the building's legal apparatus. June Halper follows closely behind us, leaning on her silver cane. Her presence an unspoken but devastating testament to Camden Vale's history of predatory tactics. And walking quietly at the rear of our formation is Mara Ellison. Mara is a forensic document examiner. She does not wear expensive suits or command rooms with booming rhetoric. She is a soft-spoken, intensely private woman who spends her life peering through high-powered microscopes in sealed laboratories. But inside a courtroom, Mara is universally feared. She dissects lies down to the molecular level. The briefing suite is chaotic. Preston has managed to summon reporters from 3 local financial publications and a handful of independent corporate bloggers. He is standing behind the polished acrylic podium, bathing in the flash of camera lenses. Elaine is seated in the front row, wearing a perfectly calculated expression of stoic maternal grief. Camden Vale stands just off the stage, his face tight, holding a thick leather portfolio. Nolan is nowhere near the front. He is hovering near the back exit, looking like a ghost trapped in a nightmare. Preston leans into the microphone. His voice is a smooth, practiced rumble, radiating false benevolence. "I am stepping in today to stabilize a law firm that is currently buckling under the weight of poor management," Preston declares to the room, projecting the image of a reluctant savior. Satterfield Row. Legal requires immediate structural intervention to protect its clients and its creditors. My daughter, Miranda, is regrettably attempting to frame a standard corporate restructuring as a personal vendetta. She is allowing her emotions to jeopardize millions of dollars in client assets. I will not stand by and watch a family legacy disintegrate because of youthful arrogance. It is a masterfully spun narrative. He sounds reasonable. He sounds responsible. On cue. Camden steps forward. He does not speak, but he places 3 distinct, heavy documents onto the display easel beside the podium for the cameras to capture. They are the forged promissory note, a newly fabricated set of corporate board minutes, and the commercial lien notice. To the untrained eye of a financial reporter, it is an insurmountable triad of administrative authority. It looks like an ironclad legal takeover. I do not wait for the reporters to start shouting questions. I walk directly down the center aisle. The murmurs in the room die down as the sea of journalists parts to let my team through. I do not look at my father. I do not engage in a screaming match. I stop just below the stage and turn to the woman standing quietly beside me. "Mara," I say, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "If you would please." Mara Ellison steps up to the side of the stage. She does not look angry. She looks profoundly bored, like a mechanic inspecting a poorly assembled engine. She pulls a laser pointer from her pocket and aims the red dot directly at the blown-up projection of the promissory note. "I do not concern myself with family disputes," Mara begins, her voice dry and clinical, echoing sharply through the microphone system. "I concern myself with ink, pixels, and time. What you are looking at is a composite fraud. A highly amateur one." Preston's confident smile falters. Freezing on his face, Camden takes a sharp, aborted step forward, but Owen Mercer shifts his stance, silently blocking his path. "Notice the kerning on the second paragraph," Mara continues, circling a section of text with the laser. The microscopic spacing between the letters deviates entirely from the rest of the document. This indicates a secondary text layer was forcefully merged into a pre-existing template. Now, look at the signature block belonging to Evelyn Rowe. It has been completely flattened. There is no digital pressure variance. Furthermore, the metadata extracted directly from the firm's servers proves conclusively that this specific file was assembled less than 48 hours ago. Evelyn Rowe has been deceased for years. She did not sign this document on Tuesday. The reporters immediately begin typing frantically on their phones. The narrative is violently shifting. Owen Mercer steps smoothly into the silence left by Mara's technical devastation. He speaks with the cold authority of a man who controls the ground beneath their feet. "As General Counsel for the Halcyon Center, I am formally stating for the record that the commercial lien notice presented here has been indefinitely suspended," Owen announces. "Our commercial registry flagged the filing this afternoon. It is entirely predicated on an instrument displaying severe undeniable markers of being counterfeit. Filing a fraudulent lien against a commercial tenant is a direct violation of state financial codes." Preston's face drains of color. The arrogant dictator is gone, replaced by a man suddenly realizing he is standing in the middle of a trap with no exits. His carefully constructed triad of evidence has just been publicly dismantled and labeled as felony fraud in front of the very press corps he invited. "This is absurd," Preston shouts, his voice cracking, slamming his hand against the acrylic podium. "These are manufactured technicalities. We hold the governing authority, and we are executing our legal right to intervene." "Dad, stop." The voice comes from the back of the room. It is not loud, but it cuts through the rising chaos like a serrated blade. Every camera pivots. Nolan steps out of the shadows near the exit. He is trembling, his face slick with sweat, but he walks purposefully down the center aisle. Elaine leaps out of her chair, her eyes wide with absolute, murderous panic, but she is too far away to physically silence him. Nolan reaches the front of the room. He looks up at the podium, directly at the man who has controlled his entire existence. "It is a lie," Nolan says, speaking directly to the cluster of microphones resting on the edge of the stage. "All of it is a lie. The debt is fake. The takeover is a front. He told us the plan was to gain temporary administrative control of Miranda's firm for one specific reason. He wanted to get inside the system to destroy the Marston Corridor lawsuit from the inside. He is the hidden defendant. He just wanted to kill her case." The room erupts. Flashbulbs explode in a blinding, chaotic strobe. Reporters are shouting over one another, realizing they just walked into the corporate scandal of the decade. A hostile takeover engineered to sabotage a massive federal lawsuit. It is blood in the water. Elaine sinks back into her chair, covering her face. Camden Vale has already turned his back, quietly moving toward the side exit, severing his ties to a sinking ship. But Preston Satterfield is a cornered animal, and cornered animals do not surrender. They bite indiscriminately. He grips the edges of the podium, his knuckles turning stark white, his eyes burning with a venomous, unhinged fury. He looks down at me, deciding that if he is going to burn, he is going to drag me into the inferno with him. "You think you are untouchable, Miranda?" Preston roars over the noise of the press, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "You think you are the patron saint of legal ethics? Tell them the truth." He points a trembling finger directly at my chest. "My daughter is representing the plaintiffs in the Marston Corridor litigation, claiming she is fighting for justice." Preston sneers, playing his absolute final, desperate trump card. What she has conveniently hidden from her clients, the judge, and the public is that she possesses a direct, vested financial interest in the very real estate she is suing over. She is a named beneficiary in the Satterfield Family Trust, which holds significant legacy assets tied to the Marston land. She is attempting to weaponize this lawsuit to inflate the value of her own secret portfolio. She does not have a clean docket. She has a catastrophic, undisclosed conflict of interest, and by law, she must be immediately disqualified from the entire case. The shouting in the room instantly dies. The silence that follows is heavy, thick with shock. The cameras pivot back to me, waiting for the impact of the accusation to hit. It is the ultimate dirty blow. If a litigator is found to have a hidden financial stake in the outcome of their own case, they are not just removed. They face disbarment. They lose everything. Preston is aiming a sniper rifle directly at my law license, attempting to shatter my credibility in the exact moment I have him pinned to the wall. I stand perfectly still under the blinding lights, looking at the man who just tried to end my career, and I feel the cold, hard weight of the vault key waiting quietly in my pocket. The silence in the media briefing suite is absolute, heavy, and suffocating. The flashing lights of the cameras freeze as the reporters digest the magnitude of the accusation my father just launched across the room. Preston Satterfield did not just throw a wild punch in the dark. He aimed a sniper rifle directly at the most vulnerable, deeply buried secret of my past. His claim is not a fabricated bluff. It is genuinely, terrifyingly dangerous. Many years ago, long before I ever stepped foot into a courtroom, I was a named minor beneficiary in the Satterfield Family Trust. It was an irrevocable financial vehicle established by Preston to shelter his vast real estate holdings, which included early investments in the acreage now known as the Marston Corridor. If I still held even a fraction of a single % of equity in that trust when I took on the Marston litigation, my moral high ground would instantly disintegrate. I would be a plaintiff's attorney secretly suing my own financial interests. It is the definition of a catastrophic ethical conflict. It would not just get me disqualified from the case. It would trigger an immediate disbarment proceeding and destroy the reputation of my firm permanently. Elaine rises from her seat in the front row. The grieving, concerned mother routine entirely vanishes. The mask shatters, revealing the cold, calculating apex predator beneath. She does not care about saving the family name anymore. She does not even care about winning the hostile takeover. She only wants mutual destruction. If they are going to lose their grip on the Marston lawsuit, she is going to ensure I lose my entire career in the process. "We are simply trying to protect the integrity of the judicial system," Elaine announces to the breathless press corps, her voice laced with venomous satisfaction. "My daughter has manipulated her clients for her own financial gain. She is suing the very land she profits from. We stepped in today because we could not allow this massive fraud to continue. For the first time since this nightmare began at 9 o'clock this morning, I find myself standing on the edge of a terrifying void. This is the danger of fighting your own blood. They know exactly where the old skeletons are buried. They know exactly which nerve to press to paralyze you. If they manage to plant this seed of doubt in the minds of my clients and the judge, my victory in the conference room will mean absolutely nothing. I will be ruined. I do not flinch. I do not rush to the microphone to scream my denials. Instead, I turn my head and look at the double doors at the back of the briefing suite. Just before we descended to the ground floor, When Preston first hinted at a conflict of interest in the conference room, I had quietly handed Tessa Keats a physical brass key. It was the key to an old fireproof floor safe hidden behind the oak paneling in my private office. A relic from the days when Evelyn Rowe owned the practice. The heavy doors swing open. Tessa walks down the center aisle, ignoring the frantic whispers of the reporters. She is holding a thick, weathered manila envelope. The wax seal on the back has just been broken. She steps up to the stage and places the envelope directly into my hands. "Read it to them," I tell Owen Mercer, handing the general counsel the heavy stack of papers from inside the envelope. Owen steps up to the acrylic podium, pushing my father aside with a subtle but undeniable flex of territorial authority. He adjusts his reading glasses and looks down at the documents. "What I hold here is a fully executed, irrevocably notarized divestment agreement," Owen states, his voice projecting a calm, lethal clarity over the murmurs. "Dated exactly 7 years ago, 3 months prior to the formal incorporation of Satterfield Row Legal. It legally severs all ties, rights, and privileges of the individual known as Miranda Satterfield from the Satterfield Family Trust." Preston's face turns an ashen, sickly gray. Elaine freezes, her venomous smile entirely wiped away. "Attached to this agreement," Owen continues, lifting a second sheaf of papers, "are certified wire transfer receipts. They prove conclusively that every single cent of accrued equity was forcefully returned to the trust's holding accounts. The balance is zero. There is absolutely no conflict of interest. The accusation is entirely baseless." The reporters erupt again, their digital recorders thrust forward, capturing the real-time destruction of Preston's final desperate lie. But the envelope contains one more piece of ammunition. I reach out and take a single, handwritten memorandum from the bottom of the stack. It is written on Evelyn Rowe's personal stationery. I step up to the microphone. "My mentor, Evelyn Rowe, was a woman who anticipated every possible angle of attack," I say, my voice steady and cold. "Before she passed away, she left this memorandum in the firm's deepest archive. It details an incident from 6 years ago. Preston Satterfield approached Evelyn privately, offering her a highly lucrative, under-the-table payment in exchange for backdoor access to our firm's confidential client list. She refused him entirely. She documented the interaction to ensure that if he ever attempted to breach these walls again, his history of coercive, predatory behavior would be a matter of permanent, undeniable record." The flashbulbs are blinding now. Preston looks around the room, his eyes wide and vacant. The man who thought he could buy the world has just been publicly bankrupted of his most valuable asset, which is his absolute control over the truth. However, the damage of a public spectacle cannot be contained within a single room. The allegations, the forged documents, the suspended commercial lien, and the staggering claims of corporate sabotage have already hit the digital wires. The scandal is spreading rapidly through the financial district of Bellmere. To completely extinguish the fire and prevent a fatal run on my firm's resources, the Bellmere Commercial Division intervenes directly. Within 2 hours of the press conference concluding, a court clerk physically serves notices to every party involved. The presiding commercial judge, furious at the public circus surrounding a sealed federal case, orders an emergency, binding administrative hearing to commence at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The hearing will definitively rule on the validity of the lien, the fraudulent control claim, and the conflict of interest allegations. It is a sudden death match. By 10 o'clock that night, the Halcyon Center is empty and silent. I am sitting alone in my 24th floor office, surrounded by open legal volumes and digital forensic printouts. The city lights outside my window look like cold, distant stars. I am preparing the decisive arguments that will permanently bury my family's legal standing tomorrow morning. The silence is broken by the harsh vibration of my encrypted mobile phone resting on the mahogany desk. It is an incoming call from an unregistered, heavily masked number. I let it ring twice before tapping the screen to accept the connection. I do not say a word. I wait. There is heavy, ragged breathing on the other end of the line. The background noise sounds like the wind whipping against a moving vehicle. Miranda! It is Nolan. His voice is shaking violently, laced with a level of pure, unadulterated terror I have never heard from him before. He has disappeared. After he broke ranks in the briefing suite and confessed to the press, he bolted from the building. I know Preston and Elaine have been hunting him all evening. Nolan, I say, keeping my tone perfectly level. Where are you? He ignores the question. He speaks rapidly, his words tumbling over one another as if he is running out of air. You have to check the Lake House ledger. Nolan gasps into the receiver. The physical book. It is hidden in the floorboard safe in the master study. I am so sorry. Miranda, we were all wrong. Dad is the face of this, but he is not the architect. Blue Glen Advisory is not the top of the pyramid. He pauses, and I hear a sharp, terrifying sob tear through his throat. Mom is... The line goes completely dead. I pull the phone away from my ear, staring at the black screen as the final, horrifying piece of the puzzle drops into place, altering the entire landscape of the war I am fighting. The heavy mahogany doors of the Bellmere Commercial Division courtroom seal shut at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. The air inside the chamber is sterile and freezing, a sharp contrast to the media circus that took place the night before. Preston Satterfield strides down the center aisle with his chin held high. Flanked by 2 highly expensive corporate defense attorneys he must have retained over the midnight hours. He takes his seat at the respondent table, adjusting his silk tie with absolute confidence. He believes this is simply another boardroom negotiation. He assumes that if he throws enough smoke into the air, the judges will force a settlement, leaving my reputation permanently stained with the implication of a conflict of interest. He still does not realize he is walking into a slaughterhouse. The 3-judge commercial panel takes the bench. They are not interested in family drama. They are interested in paper, protocol, and perjury. The presiding judge calls the emergency hearing to order and asks for my opening statement regarding the contested administrative control of my firm. I stand up. I do not deliver a passionate speech about betrayal. I do not raise my voice. I look directly at the judges and begin laying down the physical architecture of my father's destruction. Your Honors, I will not waste the court's time with rhetoric, I state, my voice carrying cleanly across the silent room. I submit into evidence a sequence of 8 exhibits demonstrating a coordinated criminal effort to seize private corporate assets and sabotage ongoing federal litigation. I hand the thick, bound dossiers to the bailiff, who distributes them to the bench. Exhibit A is the forged promissory note, falsely claiming a debt obligation to Blue Glen Advisory, I recite methodically. Exhibit B contains the fabricated board minutes. Exhibit C is the false commercial lien notice filed against my firm's receivables. Exhibit D is the spoofed lender advisory designed to fraudulently freeze our operational credit lines. Exhibit E is the digital metadata report, proving these files were created just 2 days ago. Exhibit F contains the Halcyon Center security badge logs. Exhibit G provides the audio timestamps from my private conference room. Finally, Exhibit H is the sworn, notarized affidavit of June Halper, an independent witness attesting to the predatory business practices of the respondent's operative. Preston's lead attorney jumps up, stammering an objection about the admissibility of the digital forensics, but the presiding judge waves him down with a sharp flick of her wrist. She is already reading the metadata report. I call Mara Ellison to the stand. Mara takes the oath with her usual, profoundly bored expression. Under direct examination, she does not argue with the defense counsel. She simply points to the technical realities. She testifies under penalty of perjury that the signature block on the promissory note is a digital composite fraud, entirely devoid of human kinetic pressure, constructed long after the alleged signer had passed away. Owen Mercer takes the stand next. The general counsel sits perfectly upright and confirms, utilizing the Halcyon Center's encrypted access matrix, that the Satterfield family used fraudulent courier credentials to bypass building security. He testifies that they abused a visitor access protocol to attempt a hostile administrative takeover, explicitly aiming to access highly sensitive and privileged client matters. Preston's confident smirk finally begins to dissolve. The smoke he planned to blow into the room is being cleared out by massive, undeniable industrial fans, but he still clings to his final lifeline. He still believes Blue Glen Advisory is a secure, untraceable shell company, and he believes he can walk away by blaming the entire operation on rogue contractors. Then, the heavy doors at the back of the courtroom swing open. Nolan walks in. He looks like he has not slept in a week. His clothes are entirely disheveled, and his hands are shaking so badly he can barely hold the heavy, leather-bound book clutched to his chest. He completely ignores the furious, wide-eyed glare Preston shoots at him from the respondent table. Nolan walks straight up to the wooden partition and hands the book directly to the bailiff. "I wish to submit supplementary evidence," Nolan says, his voice cracking, but loud enough to enter the court record. I step forward, officially entering the object into the registry. It is the Lake House ledger. The presiding judge opens the heavy leather cover. The silence in the courtroom becomes so dense it feels physically heavy. This is not a digital file that can be dismissed as a hacker's manipulation. This is a physical, handwritten accounting book, hidden for years inside a floorboard safe at a weekend vacation property. The ledger outlines the true hierarchy of Blue Glen Advisory, I explained to the panel, walking the judges through the columns of ink. It proves that Blue Glen is a hollow shell. More importantly, it documents the exact routing numbers and authorization signatures for the wire transfers used to pay Camden Vale, as well as the bribes paid to my former operations chief to breach my secure servers. I turn slowly, looking directly at the front row of the gallery where my mother is sitting. The signature approving the financing for this entire criminal takeover does not belong to Preston Satterfield, I declare, letting the words strike the air like hammer blows. The signature belongs to Elaine Satterfield. Elaine's perfectly practiced mask of high society elegance shatters into a million irreparable pieces. She gasps, a harsh, ugly sound, and shrinks back against the wooden bench as if the ledger itself is emitting radiation. She thought she was the untouchable architect, pulling the strings from the shadows while her husband took the spotlight. She was wrong. She left a paper trail, and her own son just handed it to a judge. But the ledger contains one final, lethal secret. If the court directs its attention to the final section of the ledger, I continue, closing the trap completely, you will find the equity distribution chart for West Haven Redevelopment Group. It details a complex web of nominee entities designed to hide ownership. It proves, conclusively, that West Haven holds a massive, controlling stake in Marston Corridor Holdings. The respondents are the hidden defendants in my current civil litigation. Their sole objective yesterday morning was to infiltrate my firm and destroy that lawsuit from the inside to protect their own real estate empire. There's absolutely nothing left for Preston's highly paid attorneys to say. The defense table is a graveyard. The three judges do not even recess to their chambers to deliberate. The evidence is overwhelming, physical, and uncontested. The presiding judge leans toward the microphone, her face a mask of absolute judicial fury. The commercial panel unequivocally dismisses every single claim of administrative control. They permanently void the fraudulent commercial lien. They issue an immediate, binding no-contact order, barring Preston, Elaine, and their associates from coming within 1,000 feet of me, my firm, or any client represented by Satterfield Row Legal. But the judge does not stop at civil protections. She looks directly at Preston and Elaine. The behavior demonstrated by the respondents in this matter goes far beyond civil disputes, the judge states coldly. This court is officially referring the entire evidentiary record, including the Lake House ledger, to the Bellmere Financial Integrity Unit and the State Prosecutor's Office. You will face criminal inquiries for the manufacturing of forged instruments, witness interference, and fraudulent business coercion. The gavel falls, echoing like a gunshot. Preston Satterfield does not get the managing partner chair. Instead, the judge's ruling instantly triggers a mandatory debt review by his primary lenders. His entire real estate empire, including West Haven, is now subjected to severe receivership scrutiny. The banks will freeze his accounts by the end of the business day. Elaine sits paralyzed in the gallery, realizing she traded her luxurious, untouchable life for a looming federal indictment. I do not stay to watch them crumble. I do not gloat. I pack my briefcases, turn my back on the people who gave me my last name, and walk out of the courtroom. When I step off the elevator onto the 24th floor of the Halcyon Center, the office is humming with its usual, focused energy. The phones are ringing softly. Paralegals are moving swiftly down the sunlit corridors. The smell of fresh, dark roast coffee fills the air. I walk past the reception desk. I stop for a fraction of a second, looking at the heavy, frosted glass where the name Satterfield Row Legal is etched in sharp, unyielding letters. Dana looks up from her multi-line phone, offering a respectful, quiet nod. "Dana," I say, my voice perfectly steady, "please contact June Halper and our other top accounts. Let them know the minor administrative disruption has been entirely resolved. Then, reschedule all the depositions we postponed. We have a lawsuit to win." I walk into my private office and close the heavy oak door behind me. The room is quiet, safe, and entirely mine. I walk over to the bottom drawer of my mahogany desk. I open it and pull out a small, silver-framed photograph I have kept hidden face down for 7 long years. It is an old picture of Preston, Elaine, Nolan, and me, taken at the lake house during a summer when I still believed blood meant loyalty. I look at their smiling faces one last time. I feel absolutely nothing. I slide the silver frame into the deep, dark wastebasket beside my desk. In its place, inside the empty drawer, I lay down the first page of the judge's dismissal order. It is a cold, clean, and perfectly legal conclusion. It hurts far more than any screaming match ever could. 7 years ago, they erased me from their family like a mistake. Today, using the exact legal system they tried to manipulate, I erased them entirely from my life and my firm with a single, irreversible signature. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. I would love to know where you are listening from, so please leave a comment down below so we can connect and share our thoughts together. Please subscribe to the Helena Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and support me even further by hitting the hype button so that the story in this video can be heard by many more people.